The story begins in a slum where we see some young boys shouting, "It's the golem! The golem is here!" As they looked at the golem, one of those boys stepped forward and said, while holding a broken torch in his hand, "Hey, golem, I'll give you this, so hurry up and give me food." The boy said this because they had heard that there is a golem in Sector 50. Nobody knows where it came from or who its owner is. What's important is that if you give it junk, it will give you food. The golem ignored the young boy and started walking away, so the boy shouted, "Hey, where are you going? You took a flashlight yesterday." And here we get the hint. It doesn't always give you food. But the young boy was not ready to give up yet, so he thought of attacking the golem, but his friend warned him, saying, "Hold it in. It'll retaliate if you attack it. They say there have been incidents of golems entering the street and killing people." Right then, a boy with white hair jumped in front of the golem, holding a bag full of scraps, and told the golem to take it. The golem grabbed the bag and gulped down all the scraps, and in return it gave plenty of food to the young boy. All the other boys who were looking at him were so jealous that they planned to attack him. Later on, in Sector 50 at the entrance to 17th Street, the white-haired boy noticed 7 people following him, so he stopped and called them out, saying, "Show yourselves! How long are you going to follow me?" Then we see a fat boy with a bunch of underlings appearing behind him and saying, "You sure have some good senses, Ray. We were following you pretty carefully, too." Ray looked at the boy angrily and said, "Ron, I know I warned you last time that if you showed yourself in front of me again, I'd make sure you'd never be able to walk again." Ron laughed at Ray and asked him, "Did you think I'd just let you leave like last time?" Then he told Ray, "Put your bag down, and I'll let you go safe and sound." Ray heard that and said, "You're a liar." And there is a saying among the children here. A ghost lives on 17th Street. A white ghost that travels silently, expressionless. Do not look into the ghost's eyes, or you will be caught in your lies. While Ray was saying this, Ron attacked Ray with a punch, but Ray dodged him and punched him back. The other boys who came along with Ron also attacked Ray at once, but Ray defeated them all in seconds. After that, he looked at Ron and said, "Just bringing more people won't change anything. I told you, Ron, that I'd make sure you'd never be able to walk again." Ron got very scared hearing that, so he started crawling back, and while pointing a dagger toward Ray, he said, "Don't come any closer, you monster!" As soon as Ray heard him, he pondered, "A monster? That might be right. Was it when I was 10? Around then, I figured out I was different." Then, while remembering a glimpse of his memory where a child was asking him, "Doesn't your leg hurt? Why aren't you crying? Kale was attacked by the kids from 7th Street. Ray, why aren't you angry?" As he remembered that, he asked himself, "Why would I cry because it hurts? Why would I be angry? What is anger to begin with?" Then he remembered another glimpse where a boy asked him, "Bello is dead. What do we do now? Even now, you don't have a single tear on your face. Something's wrong with you. You're scary." After he recalled all those memories, he thought, "I realized it then. I cannot feel what other people call emotions. Am I in the wrong? I want to be like everyone else. Even now, 6 years later, I still cannot feel emotions, but I do know how to read others' emotions. I can tell by looking at the color of the vessel within his chest. All people have a small vessel within them, and when they feel emotions, certain colors of mana fill those vessels. The likes of anger, hate, and love result in red mana. Ridicule and apathy result in blue mana. Joy and excitement result in yellow mana. And there are countless other colors. My world is bursting with color." After that, he asked Ron, "Not using blades is an implicit rule here. Did you bring that because you planned on stabbing me with it from the start, Ron?" Ron lied to him, so Ray saw his vessel's color, thinking, a deep black mana. That's intense fear. So he got close to Ron and said, "A liar like you deserves punishment." After this, the scene shifts, and in an underpass, we see a boy named Pale, who is the leader of the underpass children. Ray is standing in front of him, and Pale says, "You're back right on time." After that, Pale, Ray, and the children sit down together, and Pale says, "Now then, let's see our earnings for today." All of the children placed everything they've got, but it wasn't enough, so Ray placed the bag full of food he got from the golem, and the children, after seeing that, cheered up as they asked Ray, "You got it all from the golem, right? It didn't take anything I gave it." Ray heard that and thought, "That's because the golem only takes magic items with residual mana." After that, they started distributing the food among themselves. While this was happening, Ray walked out. Sitting outside and watching the rain, he pondered, "We never have enough food for everyone. I have a duty to support this group. I owe them my life." He recalled how those kids saved his life when he was buried under the snow and continued wondering, "It's a principle of mine to repay my debts, whether it be a favor or vengeance." Pale then also came out and, sitting with Ray, broke off a piece of his bread and gave it to Ray. He then said, "It's raining black right now." Ray replied, "Yes, it is." They say the mages who live in lower-numbered sectors used a lot of magic, which caused this rain. Pale then said, "I'm sure that golem is something sent by a mage too." Ray thought, "I agree with Pale. When the golem moves, it draws the surrounding mana to its core. It then mixes within and is expelled as a black gas, black rain, and black gas. I can't help but think there's a connection there." Just then, Ray thought of something, stood up, and told Pale, "I'll go outside for a bit." Pale tried to stop him, but Ray quickly ran away. While running toward the 18th Street Limp-Foot Hector ration warehouse, he thought, "When it rains, everyone heads indoors to avoid it. They believe that even a single drop of this black rain can make you sick. However, I can shield myself from the rain, so working becomes easier." After a while, when he reached the ration warehouse, he inspected it a little and thought, "I knew it. They always gamble on days when it rains." After that, he went inside the warehouse and, sensing the mana, wondered, "There are hundreds of different kinds of mana in the air. I draw in specific colors of mana and mix them according to the right formula." Then he created a fire on his palm with that mana and used it to search the boxes in the ration warehouse. Suddenly, he noticed a knife flying toward him, so he dodged it quickly and hid behind the boxes. Then he heard a voice. "A little rat's finally showed up. It's trying to get at our rations." Ray heard them and pondered, "There are 3 in total, and they know my exact position. I never expected they'd have equipment like night vision goggles." As the guards threw more knives toward Ray, he dodged them all and quickly defeated those guards. But as soon as he was done with them, Hector Group's executive, Humphrey, arrived there. Ray looked at him and thought, "He's as intimidating as the rumors. I need to get out of here." Ray then tried to attack Humphrey, but it didn't budge him at all. In return, Humphrey inflicted some damage on Ray. Ray knew he couldn't defeat Humphrey, so he used magic to attack Humphrey and immediately vanished. Soon after, some guards from the Hector Group started searching for Ray, and Ray was trying his best to run away from them, thinking, "I've looted the infamous Hector Group's warehouse. They'll kill me if they find me. I'm not afraid of dying, but if I'm gone, those kids won't last long." But right then, 2 guards saw him and started running after him until Ray reached a dead end. The guards then tried to attack Ray, but Ray knew Humphrey wasn't there, so he easily defeated the guards and then hid inside a garbage bin at that exact place. He stayed inside that bin all night, and the next day when he got out of the bin thinking, "Nobody should be here by now," he saw a guard standing in front of him who said, "Found you, brat. It's a good thing I came back, huh?" Ray looked at him and thought, "I can tell he's extremely angry by the color of his vessel. I haven't fully recovered yet." They both then started fighting each other with swords, and as Ray was about to get killed by him, someone shot the guard from behind, and that person was black-haired Niles, the 17th Street boss. Niles then asked Ray, "What's with this mess so early in the morning?" Ray looked at Niles and asked him, "Did someone call for you?" "You're not usually awake this early." Niles replied, "Yep," and said to Ray, "You're bold for stealing from the Hector group." Ray was looking at Niles, and he pondered. People like Niles are hard to deal with. There are people like him, people whose emotions are so monotonous that their vessel never really fills up. Then he recalled his memory and continued pondering. "I happened to pull Niles out from the river. Apparently, he used to be an executive of the 46th sector but was betrayed. The lessons on how to fight he gave me as repayment were quite structured." Then Ray said to Niles that he'd join his organization, thinking, "If I join his organization, the kids will be safe." But Niles ignored that for a while and asked Ray if he could use magic. Ray got shocked hearing that, and he asked Niles, "You know about magic?" Niles replied, "Only a few things. I asked a magician from my previous organization." Ray then questioned him, "Did he say anything about color?" Niles heard that and replied, "Color? He didn't say anything about that. He said you couldn't see mana." Ray heard him and thought, "Then what am I seeing?" After that, Ray asked him about joining the organization, and Niles rejected him, saying, "No." He added, "All sectors are along the Elton River. If you go up the river, you will arrive at other sectors. You can probably escape the slums and find a better life there. It would be too much of a waste for a kid with such abilities to die here." After that, Niles asked Ray, "You ever thought about leaving the 50th sector? I can even find you a car." Ray replied, "No. You know I take care of kids here." "So," Niles assured him, saying, "Don't worry about that. I'm thinking of starting an orphanage here." Ray knew that Niles always kept his word, so he changed the subject and told Niles, "By the way, be careful. Hector seems like he's preparing for war. I saw him receive truckloads of weapons." Niles replied, "I know. Using live rounds in a conflict is a definite declaration of war." Ray then said, "The people in the stores will suffer if you lose the war. I thought your organization's protection fees were actually somewhat reasonable." Niles heard that and replied, "It only seems that way because there are a lot of people worse than me. Stop treating me like I'm so old. I'm not even married, you know?" Ray said, "You are old." Right then, a car arrived to pick up Niles, and Niles went away after giving a small bottle of something to Ray, saying, "Sanitize your ear." Later on, in the 17th Street near the Central Square, we saw a kid crying. He saw Ray and asked him, "Did you fight? Who did this to you?" Ray saw the boy, and while looking at his colorful mana, he thought, "How fascinating. A single person can feel so many emotions at once." Then he gave the cans he stole from Hector to the kid and told him to head back to the tent and give them to Pale. The kid then ran away, saying, "Okay." After that, Ray asked the blind storyteller named Viola, "Viola, did you tell Josephine anything?" Viola replied, "Oh, it's Ray. I was telling her about the rainbows." Then she asked, "Who's going to hold fantasies if not the children?" Ray then saw Viola's purple mana color and thought, "I've never seen that in anyone besides Viola. I don't know what emotion that is." Then, while walking away, he told Viola to leave the place because a war was about to happen. The next day, we see Ray delivering something at a place, and the person there asked Ray, "What, it's you, Ray? Ron was talking about how he was going to take care of deliveries now." Ray replied, "Ron won't be here anytime soon. Both his legs are broken." Then he asked, "Aren't you going to evacuate too?" So the person replied, "The war. It might not happen." Then he pointed his finger to a room, saying, "Hector and Niles are talking in there. If things work out, there won't be war." After some time, the 18th Street boss, Hector, walked out of that room. Hector saw Ray working there, so he teased him a little, and after giving him some money, he walked forward. but Humphrey was with him too, and he recognized Ray but left without doing or saying anything. After that, the person walked inside the room with Ray and asked Niles what happened. Niles, with a stressed look, replied, "The negotiation failed. There will be a war. I can't accept such ridiculous terms, like them wanting to absorb our organization. This is really the worst outcome." He also told Ray, "Ray, don't leave your hideout in the meantime." After that, as Ray was walking back to the underpass, he saw Humphrey in an unusual car, so he decided to investigate it. Then he went to 18th Street, and while hiding behind the bushes, he saw a mage getting out of the car. While looking at his mana, Ray thought, dark blue, almost black. A ridiculously large quantity of mana. That color looks the same as the mana of golems when they move. That man is dangerous. I need to tell Niles. Then he went to the 17th Street at Niles's group's base and noticed that Niles wasn't present there, so he told a member of Niles's group to tell him to be wary of the man with a monocle. Later on, we saw Ray with Pale, and they were both hiding with the kids at the underpass. Ray told Pale that if Niles lost, Hector would sell the street children as slaves. Suddenly, they both heard a sound and got scared, thinking that something was wrong. On the other side, at 17th Street, we see Niles' group fighting with a golem. But the golem massacred all of them easily. Ray was feeling restless, so he left the underpass while telling Pale, "Pale, you wait here and protect the kids. I'll be back soon." Pale wanted to go with him, but he stayed for the kids and told Ray to come back quickly. Then, when Ray went to Niles's group's base, he saw that everyone was dead, but he noticed one person able to speak, so he asked him, "What happened?" The person replied, "Those bastards brought a golem with them. The man with the monocle controlled them." After that, he told Ray to run away. Ray heard him and thought that he had to help Niles. Right at this moment, on the other side of the bridge where Pale was hiding with the children, the golem arrived. It killed all the children, including Pale. With his last breaths, Pale wished for Ray not to come back there and to stay safe. At 17th Street, Ray was looking for Neil, thinking, "They're all corpses of Neil's men still. I don't see Neil's corpse anywhere. He must still be alive." Suddenly, he heard a blast coming from the bridge side where Pale was hiding, so he ran towards the bridge in a hurry. As soon as Ray reached there, he tried to attack the golem, but it didn't affect it. The golem threw Ray against the wall. Then Ray saw all the children dead, including Pale, and with a sorrowful face he said, "I still haven't repaid you all for what you did for me." Suddenly, he heard the sound of the golem preparing to attack him with a beam and thought, "So, it was this golem that killed them all. The underpass children, Neil's men, and all the people in this street. I'll avenge all of you." Ray tried to move, but his body wasn't capable of moving even an inch due to the golem's attack. Just when he was about to be shot by the golem, Neil struck the golem with a car. Getting out, he shouted, "Ray, are you okay?" He got close to Ray, and after seeing the dead children, he apologized to Ray, saying, "I'm sorry, Ray. It's because I was too late." Ray asked Neil, "Why would that be your fault, Neil?" "What about your subordinates?" Neil replied, "They're all dead." Then he added, "Hector, that bastard. I didn't think he'd call in mages from outside, damn it." Ray then asked him, "What will you do now?" Neil said, "I'll return to the street and look for survivors." But as he said this, the golem shot a beam right through his chest from behind. Neil fell forward, and Ray, holding him angrily, said to the golem, "I'll kill you." Ray thought of the children and then Neil's death, and a fire appeared on his palm. The golem then shot the beam towards Ray, but he shot it back with the fire and destroyed the golem with his rage. He started fondling Neil, saying, "Neil, you can't die." Neil opened his eyes and said, "Stop shaking me, you bastard. I'm already in pain as is. Although I was sure I'd never get a peaceful death, I didn't think it'd be today." Ray tried to stand up, saying, Wait, I'll bring you medicine from the car or something. Neil grabbed his hand and said, You should leave this place. Go somewhere. Better. I've always thought of you as my little brother. Swim upstream of the river, Ray. Don't get caught up in the rapids. You've got this. Later, we see Ray sitting somewhere thinking, Those were the first emotions I ever felt. It feels like I had a really long dream. Just remembering what happened yesterday puts my emotions in turmoil, almost the same as that time. Something is different for certain. Then he lit a fire on his palm, thinking, The stronger my rage, the stronger the flame I can conjure. So, the strength of my emotions does affect the strength of my magic. After that, he covered the dead bodies of everyone and left, saying, Let's move. I need to get revenge, whether it be good or bad. Soon after, at the 17th Street Central Square, we see Ray heading to attack Hector, but Humphrey stopped him from behind. Ray started attacking him continuously, thinking, The entire Hector group needs to die. Humphrey, barely dodging Ray's attacks, thought, What are these insane movements? This kid, he wasn't this strong before. I'll lose at this rate. Then he purposely let Ray push his sword into Humphrey's chest, and then he grabbed Ray on the ground with force, saying, You wouldn't choose to die over something as trivial as revenge, would you? The ghost of 17th Street, Ray. I have an offer for you. Ray calmed down a bit, so Humphrey told him, Ray, I've been watching you for a long time now. As such, I'd like to ask you to hear me out. Ray heard him and, looking at his face, thought, Silent Humphrey. They call him that because he's a quiet man that performs his duties perfectly. And that Humphrey is making this kind of desperate expression. It doesn't seem like he intends to deceive me. After that, he asked Humphrey, What is it? Humphrey replied, I'd like for you to leave Sector 50, and I'd like you to find my brother. My brother, whom Hector sold to the city of Mages. Hector said that if I work under him for 10 years, he'd tell me where my brother is. That's why I've been working for Hector. By now, my brother should be about your age. Ray heard him and asked, And why should I take on your request? Humphrey replied, Ray, you know how to use magic, don't you? I'm sure of it after that fight in the warehouse. Even if you can use a little magic now, you won't be able to beat Hector. He always keeps a terrifying mage by his side. Leave this place for now. You have to survive in order to have a chance to take revenge. Ray heard him and thought, Humphrey is right. I've never learned magic. I've simply used it by intuition alone. On the other hand, my opponent is an expert. As things stand, I have no chance of winning. Then Humphrey gave a bag to Ray, saying, This is all the money I saved up my whole life. Inside is a slip of paper with my brother's name and traits written on it. Ray asked him, Why are you entrusting me with that money? Humphrey replied, I know you. You aren't one to break your promises, and from what I've seen of you, you're definitely skilled enough to go up to a sector of a higher level. You can do it. Before leaving, Ray told Humphrey, I have a condition. Take care of all the corpses at the underpass. Humphrey agreed. But suddenly, Ray remembered something. So he told Humphrey to wait for him, and he'd be back soon. After that, he ran to the old lady Viola and asked her, Grandma Viola, I have a question. I don't have time, so please answer quickly. That story about the rainbow, is it true? That if you find a rainbow, you'll be able to make a wish? Then we see a glimpse where a child is telling Ray, Brother, brother, they say there's a rainbow somewhere in the sky, a long, colorful band that appears when the rain clears, like a pretty colored donut with a bite taken out of it. And if you find where the rainbow touches the ground, you'll be able to make a wish. Isn't that cool? Then, in the present, Viola replies to Ray, saying, Rainbows exist, whether or not you can make a wish. Hearing that, Ray looked at her and thought, There aren't any tremors in her mana. It's a clear purple color like always. I can't tell whether she's lying or not, but it's not without any basis. Ray heard this and remembered that Humphrey told him about a mage who came there looking for something, but he wasn't sure if it was a rainbow or something else. Then he asked Viola, "What if I found the rainbow thing? Would I be able to revive the dead?" Viola replied, "Who knows? They say you can make a wish, any wish, come true. However, nobody knows where rainbows are. It's likely somewhere far away." Ray then thanked Viola and left the place. After a little while, we see Ray in the outskirts of Sector 50, 23rd Street. As he was looking for the place Neil wrote down on a paper and gave him, he found a white car and thought, "Yeah, found it." So he prepared a 4-seater sedan. But when Ray got close to the car and was about to sit inside it, a member of Hector's group came there. He ran towards Ray, telling him to stop and bring the car to Hector. Ray then started the car, but Hector's man was already holding the car door, so Ray shot him with fire magic and made him leave the car, thinking, "I'm finally going outside of Sector 50. I need 1,000 warriors to like and comment next part. That way, I'll know you stood strong till the end. Until next time, stay sharp and take care." After traveling some distance, Ray stopped when night fell. Sitting beside the wood fire, he thought, "I need to find out more information on magic once I get to the next sector. What I do know is that there are 2 types of mana. Red mana, which you can use without any particular preparation, and other mana, which requires colors to be combined. Mana can't easily be manipulated, but if I channel certain emotions, I can utilize certain types more easily." He then focused on the rage within his heart and gathered a large amount of mana. "This is my maximum," he realized. "If I lose concentration on the emotion, my mana slips away." He attempted to combine different types of mana, but failed. Mana types that aren't compatible repel each other. Combining colors requires delicate effort, so it also takes a great deal of mental power. But in exchange, there are combinations that are bound to work well with each other. Let's continue combining for now. After some time, he stopped and pondered. Can I draw up mana more gently? If I can hold mana in my vessel and use it when needed, that'd make the whole process more efficient. I'll search for a way once I reach Sector 49. Back in Sector 50, on 17th Street near the bridge, the mage was searching for the golem with Hector's men. A man led him to the exact spot where Ray had destroyed the golem. As soon as the mage arrived, he noticed something unusual. There's mana lingering in the air. A magic strong enough to still linger was used here. He asked a guard if anyone lived at that place, and the guard replied that the orphans of 17th Street used to reside there. Hearing this, the mage wondered, "Really? An orphan from these streets used magic?" Figuring out the infinitely small combination of elemental magic among the infinite combinations in the world by himself? He shook his head. That's impossible. But in the off chance that the impossible happened, he must be a genius, someone who could become an archmage like the world has never seen before. Meanwhile, Ray had arrived at Sector 49. Standing outside, he remembered Niles' words. The 42nd sector is similar to this place. It's a mess. If I were to mention a difference, it would be that it's larger than the 50th sector. The buildings are taller, and there are more streets. It's the same in the lower sectors. The further upstream you go, the more dramatic the changes to the scenery. Ray walked inside, looking around. There are no golems here. Are they only found in the 50th sector? Noticing that this sector had twice as many streets as Sector 50, he decided to move quickly to gather information and continue his quest for revenge. He thought, to look into the prismatic colors and the city of mages, I really need some money. I have the money Humphrey gave me for now, but I don't know how long this journey will take. Spotting a bookstore named Veronica's Bookstore, he remembered how Niles had taught him to read. Standing close to it, he looked at the shelves and wondered, "What's that? I've never seen that before. It's filled with squares with letters on them." Suddenly, he heard an angry voice. A girl standing on the second floor of the bookstore shouted at him. "It was you who broke the window, right? You're here to steal my books again." Ray thought, "Oh, books? Is that what those things in the shop are called?" The girl continued shouting, "I don't repeat myself, piss off." Ray noticed different mana colors in her core and wondered, is it possible to feel all those emotions at once? As the girl kept shouting, Ray walked away, muttering, "What a weirdo." Later, Ray walked down a street where kids stared at him suspiciously. He thought, a cautious gaze. It's expected since I'm a stranger walking through their streets. They must think I'm here to provoke them. Yeah, this isn't any different from Sector 50. That night, Ray slept inside a car, murmuring to himself, "I've walked quite a lot of streets but found nothing on magic. I'll need to search more areas tomorrow." Suddenly, he noticed the kids who had been staring at him earlier were now planning to attack. Before they could act, Ray struck first, quickly defeating them. He made them sit in a line and demanded, "Hey, how many streets do you guys own? Answer me." The kids, terrified, replied, "3. Only 3." Ray saw the mana color shift and knew they were lying. He punched one of them and turned to another. "You tell me now." The kid immediately stammered, "I'll tell you everything. We have 14 streets, 52 members in total, and our leader is Kedrick. Our base is an abandoned factory." Ray, after knowing about 14 streets, thought, they're way bigger than I thought. Then he asked the kid his name and the orders given to them by their leader. The kid replied, "My name is Neshu, and the orders were to beat you within an inch of your life and to steal whatever food you had, and he'll be watching everything." Suddenly, the fourth boy tried to attack Ray from behind, so Ray used wind magic to stop him and then told the boy fiercely, "Tell your leader that he's not the only one watching." After that, while walking in the sector, he was thinking, just like in Sector 50, the people of Sector 49 don't know about magic. I've heard that books are bundles of paper with all kinds of information written on them. If there are all kinds, then there are bound to be ones about magic. Just when he was thinking that, a bunch of kids came there and asked, "Hey there, can you come with us? We're not here to fight, so ease up." The kids replied, "Yes, you beat our friends in quite a fashion, so our boss took a liking to you." Ray noticed that the guys were trying to read something from a letter, so Ray asked them, "Hey, do you guys know how to read?" One boy said, "How would I know how to read?" And the other one, realizing he said the wrong words, added, geez. He said to tell you exactly what was written on here." Ray then grabbed the letter from their hands, saying, "Give it to me. I'll just read it myself." The boys asked him, "You know how to read?" And Ray replied, "Yes, a little bit." Ray then read the letter, and it said, "Come work for me. I'll make sure you'll never starve." After that, Ray asked the kids, "How do you guys choose the leader?" One boy replied, "By fighting. The strongest becomes the leader." After hearing that, Ray walked forward and said, "All right, let's go to meet your leader." Later on, we see them at the Kedrick Group's base, an abandoned factory where Kedrick was waiting for Ray. He told him to sit down while adding, "I invited you here not as an enemy, but as a guest." Ray noticed a ring on Kedrick's hand and thought, there have been times when mana would flow out from junk, but I've never seen an object with that much mana before. As Ray was sitting down, he noticed the boys standing in his surroundings and thought, he's making sure to assert his dominance. He's around my age, but his leadership is already this proficient. Kedrick then said, "I like you even more now that I'm seeing you in person. You've got nerves of steel." Then he asked, "Where are you from?" "I heard you got over here with a car." Ray replied, "I'm from Sector 50. And as soon as he said that, everyone around him panicked and started talking as if this is something new to them. So Kedrick stopped them, and then he said to Ray, "If that's true, then that's incredible. You're more than qualified to enter our organization. We're planning to join a real organization, you see. The organization's name is Merc Red. It's a super famous organization from Sector 45. We have an agreement to join their ranks once we have 66 members. After telling that, he asked Ray, "How about it? Isn't that reason enough for you to join our organization? It's an opportunity to raise your status." Ray replied, "That's quite an interesting story. However, I refuse to work for someone weaker than me." Kedrick angrily asked Ray, "Did you just say that I'm weaker than you?" Ray then teased him, saying, "Back in Sector 50, we decided who our leader was by strength, not by how well we talk." The underlings of Kedrick got angry hearing that, and they tried to attack Ray, but Kendrick grabbed one of them and angrily asked them, "Who told you to speak? You know I hate being interrupted, right?" Ray saw that and thought, "Strengthening magic?" But it doesn't seem like he's using magic himself. That ring is emitting mana. Kedrick then stopped beating his subordinates and sat back while saying, "Sorry, I got a little heated. Now, should we continue where we left off? You're saying that I'm weaker than you, right? Let's test it." Ray replied, "Yeah, you're weaker than me." So Kedrick got more angry and he said, "Fuck you! Say that again!" while throwing a sofa towards Ray. Ray saw that and noticed the flow of mana, thinking, the ring reacts to Kedrick's emotions. He doesn't know what the ring is doing for him. Then Kedrick asked Ray, "Okay, Ray, you want to see my strength, right?" Ray replied with a serious look on his face, "Let's fight for the leader position, Kedrick. If I lose, I'll work for you." Kedrick agreed and said, "Good. Let's do it in 1 week. We'll fight at a time when everyone's watching. That includes my guys and the guys from the other gangs. That way we'll be certain who's stronger, don't you think?" Ray agreed to that as well, and then he asked Kedrick, "Where did you get that ring?" Kedrick replied, "You'll find out if you defeat me. That won't happen, though." After that, the next day, Ray was walking in the street while thinking about something, and suddenly he was attacked by some boys. Ray looked back, and the boys were prepared to go all out. As they asked Ray, "Who gave you permission to walk around here?" "You must be out of your mind. Don't think about running. We run these streets." Ray told them to shut up and fight him. Soon after, we see Ray defeating all of them and wondering, no matter where I go, people keep picking fights with me. It must be because the word of my fight with Kedrick is going around. Though Kedrick's gang isn't attacking me as instructed, that doesn't apply to the other gangs. Allowing a stranger to walk around unscathed hurts their pride. Even the other gangs are forming alliances to keep me in check. Well, it's all going according to the plan. My magic gets stronger the more I get used to it. As I gain more experience, I cast spells faster and less mental power is consumed. Provoking fights was a good choice. Ray then noticed someone staring at him while hiding, so he told him to come out. A boy with glasses came out and asked, "Ray, gray hair, expressionless face, you're the hunter, right?" Ray looked at the boy and thought, "He's smaller than his peers, yet he's going around alone. Doesn't look like he's good at fighting either. Weird." Then he walked forward, saying, "Take off your glasses. It'll hurt my hands when they break." The boy panicked after hearing that and told Ray that he's not here to fight with him. He further added, "My name is Philip, and I have an offer for you." Then, after a while, we see Philip taking Ray with him somewhere. As he arrives at the place, he opens the door, and after seeing a rush of kids inside the place, Ray gets impressed. Philip then says to Ray, "Welcome to Philip Hotel." Ray then asks Philip, "It looks like there are over 100 people here." Philip says, "More accurately, we have 186, including the guys working outside." Ray then noticed the kids inside that hotel and said, "Everyone here has something in common. It looks like it'd be hard for them to join another group. They're all either young or have a small build." Philip heard him and complimented him, saying, "Oh, you're right. You've got a sharp eye." Philip then further told Ray, "We have a lot of mines in Sector 49. Because of that, there's a ton of work to do. Shops are willing to hire even children. There are too many for even the groups managing the streets to handle. So, in exchange for holding a monopoly over work with a couple of groups, I've agreed to pay them a small bribe and send them workers if they need any. I'm a broker of sorts. I even provide shelter. Not for free, of course. Ray was impressed by Philip, so he asked him, "You created all of this on your own?" Philip replied, "Of course you don't know how hard I work to set up all this infrastructure." Right then, a boy named Jonathan came to Philip, and Philip asked him, "Ah, Jonathan, how's that job at the restaurant going?" Jonathan replied, "It's going great. No one's bullying me when I go to work." And while giving him some money, he added, "Here, this month's rent." Philip grabbed it, and as he was entering this in his book, Ray started staring at him. Philip then told Ray, "This is a notebook related to hotel management. You look pretty curious. Want to take a look? Though you might not get it even if you do read through it." After a bit of checking, Ray found something written in the book about him, so he said to Philip, "You've investigated me a lot." Philip realized Ray can read, so he apologized to him, saying, "Sorry. It's not an excuse, but I like observing people. Please look over it." Ray gave him the book back and said, "There's no need to apologize. It doesn't bother me." Philip then took Ray to his room, but the two guys guarding the room asked Philip, "Who's he?" "You know we can't just let anyone in." Philip told them, "He's that hunter everyone's been talking about. I told you I'd be bringing him over as a guest." Then, as they entered inside the room, Philip told him, "I use this place by myself. Make yourself at home and take a seat." After that, as Philip was putting the money in his treasury, Ray said to him, "When I first heard about you, I thought you were a con man." Philip heard that and said, "Come on, I don't lie. Credit is the most important thing in business. You can always earn back money, but once you've lost credit, you'll have a hard time earning it back." Ray then asked him about the proposal he was talking about, and Philip, while mustering up some courage, replied, "I have a genuine business proposal for you to become my business partner once you've beaten Kedrick and become the new leader." Ray noticed Philip's mana turning yellow and thought, "He was scared of me, but now he's brimming with courage." Then he asked Philip, "You don't think I'd lose?" And Philip replied, "I can't exclude that possibility, but you have a high probability of winning." Ray asked him why, so he replied, "It's a hunch. I told you, didn't I? I like observing people. If I watch a person's behavior and habits closely, I'll get a good idea of what they're like." After that, he told Ray about some of his behaviors, and Ray got amused by Philip, accepted the deal, and added, "I have a condition as well, Philip. It seems you have a lot of connections here, so I need you to find something for me." After that, 2 days later, we see a person from Philip's group was fixing Ray's car and saying, "Looking at the state of your car, I'd believe it if you said you crossed the desert. By the way, it looks like Philip's taken a real liking to you. He rarely sends out someone as skilled as me." Then he told Ray to pass him the wrench, and Ray used magic for that. Soon after, when he had fixed the car, he stood up and added, "It's done. Except for the engine overheating, there wasn't much to do. I replaced the coolant with something way better, so it should be fine from now on. It was a request from Philip after all. Philip is our savior. If it wasn't for him, we wouldn't have been able to get any work to begin with. That's why we don't have any complaints about paying him a portion of our income." After that, he gave a letter written by Philip to Ray and left while saying, "He said it would be hard to memorize the whole message. That's why he gave me that paper. See you again. Bye." After that, he remembered the time when he told Philip to dig information about mages, and he told him he'd be quick in that. Right then, we see Ray sitting in his car and complimented Philip's work, thinking, "I didn't think he'd be able to acquire this much information in just 2 days." Then he read the information on the letter which said, "2nd Street, Wolf Baker's Wolfman, age 42, Baker, male. Carried a heavy bag with one hand. 8th Street, Kenny Stores Andrew, age 23, clerk, Male, ate dry wheat bread without any change in expression. Ray thought that the second one is worth checking, so soon after we see him watching and while analyzing his magic, he thought, Lenin is excluded. He doesn't have a ring on his chest. That just leaves one person. Builder, 32-1, empty shopping district. Name is unknown. Male, age is between 30 and 40. Often observed going between above and underground with food in hand. Assumed to be living underground. When a pipe fell from above due to an accident, a strong wind blew, and he narrowly avoided an accident. He did not appear surprised in the slightest. There's a high likelihood that he is a mage. Then we saw Ray walking outside the Veronica bookstore, and he saw two boys standing in front of the bookstore. One of them said, "Nice. They're also closed today. They won't be able to open up at this rate." The other boy asked him, "How would they be able to hold out with us throwing rocks every day? If we stop here, then wouldn't our job be done?" As soon as the other boy heard that, he shouted at him, saying, "You idiot! They said they'd pay us double if the store goes up for sale. We can't stop here. We'll throw them at the second floor this time. Not at the store, but their home. We'll force them to move out." After that, the boy picked up a rock and said, "Now let me show you how it's done." But suddenly, as he was about to throw the rock towards the window, the red-haired girl opened the window while shouting angrily, "Hey, go away already! I heard everything! So it was you guys throwing rocks at the store! You better scram, you bastards!" Ray was looking at her mana core, and he thought, light yellow is courage and conviction. However, seeing how it's filled with black mana, she seems to be quite frightened. The boys, after hearing the girl, said, "Hey, you think we can't see you shaking in fear? Must be nice having a house. See, we don't have anywhere to sleep." The girl then told them to shut up. "The adults are coming down to get them," she said. The boy said, "Who doesn't know that you only have kids and some sick old person in there?" The girl again shouted at them with fear and anger, "Shut up and leave already!" The boy then threw a rock towards the window, and while throwing another rock, he added, "This time, I'll aim for her face." Ray tried to use his magic to stop the rock, but the girl's magic stopped the rock first. The boys were shocked, and one of them said, "What was that just now?" The other boy said, "Well, we must have imagined it. Let's try again." Ray also noticed that and thought, "No, that was clearly magic. She's a mage." The girl again shouted at those boys while keeping her hands forward, "Get lost already!" And the boys then threw several rocks at once towards the girl, saying, "Pretending to be tough, huh? You can't do anything from there." The girl wasn't able to block them with her magic, so she closed her eyes in fear. But luckily, Ray was there, and he used wind magic to block the rocks. Then he used the wind and struck one of those boys with the rock. Then he came out and smashed a rock on the other guy's face, making them both unconscious. Then the girl came down and thanked him, saying, "Thank you for helping me." Ray then said, "No need for that. By the way, I have something I wanted to ask." The girl replied, "Me too." Then Ray asked her, "Are you a mage?" The girl also asked him at the same time, "You used magic back there, right?" They both got shy, so the girl coughed and asked Ray, "Well, want to go inside and talk?" Then, as they walked inside, the girl told Ray, "My name is Veronica, child of Veronica's bookstore." Ray said, "I'm Ray." The girl added, "Ray, huh? I see." Then she apologized to Ray, saying, "Sorry for yelling at you last time. I thought you were one of those kids who'd throw rocks." Ray replied, "I understand. The situation allowed for a misunderstanding back then." And the girl added, "Thank you again for helping me back there. I'd be in big trouble if it weren't for you." Ray heard her and told her, "No need to thank me that much. I just wanted to take a look around this bookstore. I had only wanted to obtain some magical knowledge, but meeting a mage here was a bigger gain than expected." The girl heard him and asked herself, "Really? Aren't people usually more receptive to appreciation here? Strange kid." Ray then asked Veronica, "Veronica, Where did you learn magic? Veronica replied, My grandpa took me and my siblings in, and Ray intervened as he got shocked, knowing that, and he asked her, Your grandfather can also use magic? Veronica replied, Yes, of course. He's a mage, after all. Ray then asked her, May I meet your grandfather? Veronica replied, Yes, it should be fine. I'll have to go upstairs and tell him first, though. Veronica noticed a wound on Ray's cheek and told him, Wait, there's a cut on your cheek. Ray checked it and replied, I got grazed, it seems. It's fine. Veronica worriedly said, But you might get an infection if you leave it be. Then she touched his cheek and did the healing magic, saying, All done now. Ray immediately asked her, How did you do that? She questioned Ray back, What do you mean, how? Ray replied, You just moved white mana and then used it to create light to heal me. After saying that, he thought, No matter how hard I focused, I couldn't move the white mana. It only reacts when someone is considerate or dedicated, or when someone sacrifices themselves. All of those are emotions far from me, who's emotionally incapable. Veronica was clueless about mana, so she told Ray, I just used healing magic. That's all. Then she asked him, But what do you mean by white mana? Ray heard her, and remembered when Niles told him that he never heard about mana and colors. Then he thought, Even the mages can't see mana, huh? Veronica then added, I don't know what you mean by white mana. And he asked Ray, Do you mean the element of regeneration? Ray didn't know anything about the elements, so he asked her back, What is the element of regeneration? And she replied, The element that was used for the magic just now is called the element of regeneration. Usually, healing magic uses only one element, the element of regeneration, though we could add 2 or more assisting elements to it. Ray then asked her, How many elements are out there? And she replied, There are actually a lot of elements. There are over 20 types if you just count the natural elements. If you count the others, such as amplification, disturbance, manipulation, and regeneration, there has to be at least 100 of them. Ray was learning something one by one, so he asked Veronica about her grandfather, and she replied, Yes, he's on the 2nd floor. He's really sick, so he can't get out of bed most of the time. Veronica then went up, saying, I'll go check if Grandpa is awake. I'll be right back. After that, Ray started checking the books, but when he was about to touch one, he thought, I heard books are very expensive items. Touching them with dirty hands would only lower their value. He then saw some journals on the table and started reading their names. Study of elemental distribution by sector. About the reason for the expansion of the Black Rain. I need 1,000 warriors to like and comment next part. That way, I'll know you stood strong till the end. Until next time, stay sharp and take care. After a little while, Veronica came downstairs, and Ray asked her, Are there any books about magic? I looked around but couldn't find any. Veronica raised an eyebrow and asked, You can read? Did you check the book titles? Ray nodded. Yeah, I can. Hearing this, Veronica thought to herself, This kid's more interesting than I thought. Then she told Ray, I don't think you'll be able to talk to my grandfather right now. He's fast asleep. Could you come back here tomorrow? Ray replied, All right, I'll come back tomorrow. As he was walking out, Veronica called after him. Why do you want to meet my grandfather anyway? Ray paused and said, I'm looking for the prism. Later, we see Ray sitting at a restaurant. After reading some information about a certain man, he thought, Hopefully, I can get some information related to magic. He noticed that the information on the paper was provided by a boy named Joni. Just then, Johnny arrived at Ray's table with an order in his hand. Ray told him, I didn't order anything. Johnny grinned and replied, It's on the house. You must be the hunter, right? You're a hero to the kids right now, you know. Ray then asked Joni about the man's schedule. Johnny replied confidently. It's 100% correct, written on the paper. During the past 3 months that I've worked here, I've seen that man come in and out of the basement of that building at those exact times. As Joni finished speaking, the restaurant owner called for him and he hurried away. Ray waited for a while, then spotted a man on the street. Noticing the man's mana, Ray thought, that person has rings like that mage with the monocle. He has to be a mage. Ray followed the man to his house and stood outside, pondering. The man leaves his house for about an hour. I have to find clues about magic in this house during that 1 hour. Ray noticed the door was locked, but managed to open it using his mana, though he wasn't sure how he'd done it. Once inside, he searched the house and found some letters. After reading them, he thought, judging from the content of this letter, he's been booted out of the organization. Suddenly, he felt mana emanating from a small box. He opened it and found it filled with red gems. Ray's eyes widened as he thought, this is the same jewel that was embedded in Kedrick's ring. This must be the red bloodstone that the letter was referring to. It's still the same mana, but unlike the mana in the air, this jewel can lure it all in much more smoothly. Ray decided to keep some of the red stones, as they seemed to yield good results when he tested them. Just then, he heard footsteps. Someone was walking inside the house. Ray quickly hid behind a door. The homeowner walked in, muttering, "Damn, I can't believe I left my wallet." As he turned to leave, he noticed Ray and added, it seems there was something else that I needed. Without warning, the man attacked Ray, shouting, "Right, I'll need some rat poison too." Ray slashed back with a knife, cutting the man's face. The man, now furious, demanded, "Who are you? I thought it was an assassin from the organization, but it's just a kid?" Ray attacked again, thinking, I'll subdue him and make him spill everything he knows. The man, Walter, used magic to stop Ray's knife. Ray realized he focused his mana to the hand he was holding the blade with. He used magic to prevent getting cut. Walter tried to slice Ray, but Ray mimicked Walter's magic, stunning him. Walter, now severely injured, speculated that Ray might have been sent by his boss. He growled, "I'll make sure the boss has no choice but to recognize my ability. I'll just burn you to fucking death, you damn assassin." As he spoke, Walter engulfed himself in flames and launched a fiery attack at Ray. Ray noticed something unusual in Walter's mana core and thought, the mana is spinning the rings intensely. Because of that, the red mana is quickly dispersing throughout his body through the blood vessels. This is dangerous. Walter attacked again, but Ray used protection magic to block him. Walter sneered, "You just plan on playing defense, but until when?" Walter attempted a massive attack, but Ray used elemental magic to extinguish the flames and defeated Walter with his full strength. After the fight, Ray felt a nosebleed and thought, this is the after effect of using magic at my maximum mental capacity. The firepower of the magic was incomparable. That Walter was really powerful. I can't imagine how strong that mage with the monocle would be. I can't carry out my revenge at my current strength. However, he reassured himself, with enough time, I can still get much stronger. The next day, Ray returned to the bookshop. Veronica, upon seeing him, welcomed him and asked, "Your outfit changed? You were wearing a raincoat yesterday." Ray replied, "I got rid of it," and thought to himself. While he wouldn't have seen my face because the room was dark, he could recognize me if I were in the same attire. Veronica then told Ray, "I told my grandpa about you, about how you used magic to help us, and that you're looking for the rainbow." Ray asked her, "You didn't tell him anything else, right?" She replied, "Nope, you didn't tell me anything other than that after all." Ray noticed two kids staring at her while hiding, so Veronica added, "They're my little brothers. My grandpa brought them from the orphanage. He took in me, Multa, and Julfine." After that, she entered her grandpa's room, saying, "Grandpa Graham, I brought Ray. He's the one who helped us." Here, we get to see Grandpa Graham. As he looked at Ray, he thought, "Ah, so it's him." Then he asked Veronica, "Can you stand outside for a bit, Veronica?" Veronica left the room, saying, "All right." As Ray sat close to the old man, Graham said to him, "First and foremost, you have my gratitude. I heard you helped Veronica chase those kids off. That was something I was supposed to do. But as you can see, I am not in the best condition." Ray replied, "It wasn't difficult at all." While observing Graham's monocore, Ray thought, "He has 4 rings: red for anger, orange for comfort, yellow for excitement, green for embarrassment, blue for indifference, and navy for sorrow. All of these are emotions that would be hard to feel at the same time. Therefore, this isn't mana. Rather, they're colors engraved in the vessel. The numerous ripples and waves of emotions over the years have left their traces. It's hard to read emotions from this type." Then he said to the old man, "I've been searching for a mage until now." The old man asked him, "You are a mage, no? According to Veronica, you used magic quite skillfully." Ray replied, "But I do not know many things." The old man then asked Ray about his life, but Ray hesitated. Seeing this, the old man added, "If you find it hard to answer my question, then how about this? Let's play a game. The winner of each round can ask the loser a question." Then the old man asked Ray, "Do you feel mana between us right now?" Ray replied, "Yes," and thought, "Not only can I feel it, I can see it." The old man told Ray, "Each magic uses a different element. When elements meet, they can even create new ones. What's between us right now is the element of maintenance. It's the element needed for magic to maintain homeostasis without being impacted by external factors. And because of said homeostasis, it is also the most difficult one to maneuver." Ray noticed another element and asked, "What about the element beside it?" The old man asked Ray if he could feel 2 elements, and Ray replied, "Yes." Thinking, "There is a gray and a deeper gray. They're definitely different tones." The old man was shocked and murmured with an amused expression, "There was no need for me to go through hundreds of orphanages. He identified the element's maintenance and continuation immediately, something a regular mage cannot do in their entire lifetime. Oh, how cruel is the twist of fate. I don't have much to live, and yet I've found the true talent." Ray asked the old man about the element, but the old man denied, saying, "It's no fun if I told you so easily. Win the game and figure it out. It is simple. Right now, there exists a sphere made up of 2 different elements between us. Try pulling said sphere towards yourself, and once it reaches someone's hand, they win. The sphere can be placed closer to you at the start for the sake of fairness." Ray heard him and thought, "It'd be difficult to win against a mage much more skilled than me, but because he set a handicap, it's not impossible." Then he agreed to it. As soon as they started playing, the old man won quickly. He said, "So I'll ask the question first?" and asked Ray, "Who did you learn magic from?" Ray replied, "I'm self-taught." The old man was shocked again and said, "You've surprised me twice in a mere day." They restarted the game, but the old man won again in the next try. As he asked the question, Ray thought to himself, "I've just been giving him info about myself. At this rate, I won't get anything out of him. I need to use a different method." Then, as they started playing again, Ray used magic beforehand and won. The old man appreciated Ray, and Ray asked him, "What is mana?" The old man replied, "Mana is the most fundamental element that all things in the world are constituted of. One cannot see or touch it, but like lightning strikes, fires, or hail, one can observe its movements through secondary phenomena. Additionally, A very small number of humans are born with the sensory ability to perceive mana. However, being able to sense mana does not mean being able to use magic. That's because the talent for sensing mana and manipulating it are entirely separate domains. Ray heard it and further asked, "By talent, do you mean the ability to manipulate mana?" The old man thought, a second question, but I'll let it slide. Then he replied, "Correct. It refers to the ability to separate the individual elements that make up mana and combine them in the correct proportions. Generally, those who understand themselves well tend to have greater talent as mages. In a way, magic is a discipline of exploring one's inner self. That's why there's a saying, 'Mana waves to those who are honest with themselves.'" After that, they went for another round. Ray, showcasing his talent, won again. The old man observed this and thought, the element of maintenance is considered the hardest element to handle. Yet he is learning how to handle it by understanding its characteristics in real time. Then he asked Ray, "What would you like to know?" Ray seized his chance and asked, "I'd like to know about the rings that mages have in their heart." The old man replied, "Rings. You can think of those circles as a vessel to contain mana." Ray further asked, "Does that make the mana easier to use than the ones still in the air?" The old man nodded and replied, "That's right. It may be fine to use mana in the air a few times, but if done constantly, it will cause mana poisoning. Usually the reaction comes immediately once a mage uses the mana in the air. They may feel hazy and drowsy, be unable to stop laughing, or be unable to stop their tears due to sorrow. The symptoms of mana poisoning differ between people. Once these symptoms pile up, it will develop into a permanent mental disease." Ray listened carefully and, while processing the information, said, "If someone could utilize the mana in the air while being immune to mana poisoning, they would have a great advantage." The old man nodded and added, "That's a unique idea. However, I've never seen such a person before. If such a person existed, they would be incomparable to mages who only use refined mana for safety, since there is an infinite amount of mana in the air." The old man then asked Ray, "Do you want to achieve something?" Ray replied, "There's someone I'd like to kill, and someone I'd like to save." The old man raised an eyebrow and said, "I've heard many people claim the former before. However, this is the first time I've heard the latter." After a moment of silence, the old man asked, "Ray, would you like to learn magic from me?" Ray hesitated, thinking to himself, "Why would a mage with 4 circles want to teach an orphan from the streets? I don't understand his purpose. Does he want something from me?" After pondering, Ray replied, "All right, I would like to." The old man then called Veronica inside and asked her to sit down. He asked her, "Do you remember why I took Molta, Julfine, and you in from the orphanage?" Veronica responded, "To leave your knowledge as a legacy." The old man nodded and said, "That's right, and this is a part of my knowledge, so you must listen as well. This is about the rainbow." He then turned to Ray and asked, "Ray, I heard you were looking for the rainbow, correct?" Ray nodded, and the old man continued, "The rainbow is a story that has been passed down since ancient times. Even now, there are definitely many who wander the world in search of it. There are hundreds of theories regarding the rainbow, but all of them converge at one point. The one who finds the rainbow can become a godlike entity." Both Ray and Veronica looked confused at the mention of a god, so the old man explained, "To put it simply, they are an almighty being that can implement anything and everything they want in this world." Ray thought to himself, so that's why the monocle mage was also looking for the rainbow. As they were having this conversation, a rock came flying through the window, shattering the glass. It was about to hit Veronica's face, but Ray quickly used wind magic to stop it, resulting in cuts on his arm from the shattered glass. Veronica noticed that Ray had also used magic to prevent the broken mirrors from falling on her. Ray thought, I clearly gave a warning by making one of his arms useless, but they have no intention to stop the request regarding the bookstore, it seems. The old man thanked Ray, saying, You've saved us yet again. Thank you. I should be the one doing this, but I'm physically incapable. He then turned to Veronica and said, Veronica, please heal Ray's injury. Veronica began healing Ray's wound, saying, It'll be done soon. Ray noticed tears in Veronica's eyes and thought, This is only a small injury, on someone else, no less. Is this really something worth shedding tears over? Veronica said, It'll scar your skin if this isn't done. Ray replied, I think scars would be helpful, to be honest. They're a mark of honor from enemies of the past. It doesn't sound half bad. The old man then told Veronica, Veronica, refrain from utilizing magic before creating a circle. You've used the mana from the air too much, it seems. She nodded and replied, Understood, Grandpa. After healing Ray's injury, Veronica began cleaning up the broken glass. Ray then said to the old man, I heard they've been throwing rocks for a long time. The old man sighed and added, It's been over a month since it started. I think this is done through someone's request. There's someone who kept making offers to buy this store, so it's highly likely this is their doing. Ray asked, You don't intend on selling the bookstore, correct? The old man replied, That has been my intention until now, but it is true this is getting unbearable. It was half a year ago when I opened up this bookstore. It was to train my disciples and to finish the research paper that I had put my entire life into. I was quite satisfied with this lifestyle. I could meet children and welcome those who were in need of books. However, Veronica has been managing the store in my place due to my illness. If I were to die, things would only get worse. There will be no easier prey than a store with only kids. I'll have to sell this place and look for a suitable home for the children. As soon as Veronica heard this, she shouted in pain, No! You can't sell the store! This place is where your dreams lie, Grandpa. You said you wanted to run a bookstore since your childhood. The old man heard her and said, Veronica, thank you for your consideration. However, not all things will work out according to how you wish in this world. Veronica was still not ready to accept that, so she shouted, I still don't want to. I don't want to close down the store. I don't want to see you disappear. Veronica hugged the old man while saying this, and he added, It seems I've put too much burden on you. Later on, when the old man was sleeping, Veronica told Ray as she explained the old man's illness to him. It's called the eternal sleep disease, a rare disease. It began 2 months ago. His sleeping period will grow longer and longer until he never opens his eyes again. He can't move anymore and can only stay awake for 2 to 3 hours a day. Then she asked Ray, Could you come back tomorrow? He's usually awake in the morning. Soon after, we saw them both at the door, and noticing the black rain outside, Veronica made Ray wear her raincoat and said, Thank goodness my raincoat suits your size. See you tomorrow, Ray. As Ray was about to walk out, he pondered, Though I cannot relate to others' sadness, I know a few words and actions to comfort them. Then he said, Don't worry. It will all go well, to Veronica, and walked out while receiving a thank you from her in return. Soon after, as Ray was walking out in the rain, he looked around in the street for the kids who threw the stone and wondered where they went. The 8th Street, where the bookstore is located, is the territory of the Jeffers gang. Those kids back then must be from there too. Did they all return to their hideout because of the black rain? I was planning to take care of Jeffer, but it seems I have to modify my plan a bit. After that, he ran towards Philip, thinking, I have to look for Philip first. Since he's connected to the other gangs, he could probably arrange a meeting with Jeffer. Then, as he arrived at Philip's hotel, he saw some of Cedric's men guarding a container and thought, That's the Cedric's gang. What are they doing here? Then he heard them saying, Hey, when will he be done? The other one replied, You know our boss. He will do it until morning. Ray understood that Cedric and Philip were inside, and these men were guarding Cedric. Then we see that inside, Cedric was humiliating Philip after beating him up and making him unable to move, shouting at him, You arrogant fucking bastard! Looking at the likes of you makes my... As he was about to speak further, Ray arrived there, and while walking inside after defeating Cedric's men, he called Cedric's name. Cedric looked at Ray and asked him, What is it? Do you also have business with this guy? Ray looked at Philip in a bad condition and thought, Philip, did he lose consciousness? I don't have any obligation to stay loyal to him as a business partner, but he has helped me out in various ways, and I always repay my debts. That is my rule. As he was thinking that, he stepped forward and guarded Philip. Cedric looked at him and said, You sure lack patience? Our duel is tomorrow, but you want to fight right now? Ray noticed Cedric's mana core had changed and thought, He has changed. Both his vessel and the ring's mana have grown larger and become more distinct than before. It's as though he grew stronger by keeping it on. Then he replied to Cedric, I didn't come here to fight. I just heard something. After that, he asked him, Why did you do this to Philip? Cedric smiled and asked Ray back, What? Do you know him? So this brat came looking for you too, huh? Going on about some weird business proposal, right? That's all this bastard can do, after all. Leeching off the strong, just looking at him makes me sick. Then he tried to attack Philip, but Ray stopped his punch, and Cedric said to him angrily, Scram! This doesn't involve you. Ray then asked Cedric, Tell me why you're doing this. Cedric pushed his hand back and said, Why? You know, just looking at the weak disgusts me so much that I can't bear it. Ray heard that and asked him, You hate weak people? He then added, I despise them. They make me want to throw up. Ray replied, But that's no reason to injure someone. Cedric then punched the wall and said to Ray, Fuck off now. Unless you want to turn out like him, I'll show you what happens when someone intrudes on my territory. I'll make an example out of that bitch. Ray grabbed the gem in his pocket that he stole from Walter and thought, If I use this gem now, I'll be able to resolve this situation easily. However, I don't know what kind of side effects there might be, so I can't use it. After that, he said, Then I don't understand. If you're talking about examples, there's a far better one. Cedric didn't get what Ray wanted to say, so he asked, What do you mean? Ray replied, I said, There is a far better method if you want to make an example of someone. Cedric heard him and added, Don't play games with me. Ray then said, Judging by your words, it sounds like you're going to kill Philip. Then he asked Cedric, If it happens when no one's watching, then what's the point of doing it? If it were me, I'd do it in front of everyone. Whether I kill him or beat him to a pulp, wouldn't that be far more effective? Cedric heard Ray and, while imagining the duel day, thought, That would definitely be more effective. Then he said, That's not a bad idea. Ray further added, If you're going to execute him, doing it on the day of our duel would be best. All of the strongest people in Sector 49 will be watching. Cedric heard that and replied, That's a useful idea. Then he pointed his finger towards Philip and asked, But what if he happens to run? Ray replied, Don't worry, I'll be responsible for him. Cedric agreed to him and said, Well, fine. You don't seem like someone who would go back on their word. After that, he left the place, saying, Ray, I'm sure you wouldn't do it, but if you do happen to free Philip or he runs away, then you'll have to take his place. Then Ray tried to wake Philip up, asking, Philip, are you okay? Can you talk? Ray noticed that he wasn't even moving an inch, so he thought, He's in a worse state than I thought. Then we saw him taking Philip to the hotel, and as he knocked on the door, the boy from inside shouted while opening the door, What? At this time of night? Don't you know we aren't open for business on days when the black rain falls? The boy got shocked, seeing Philip on Ray's shoulder as Ray asked the boy for help. I need 1,000 warriors to like and comment next part. That way, I'll know you stood strong till the end. Until next time, stay sharp and take care.